wasn't there, and I walked by this poster, this picture in a window at the Navy recruiter, and they had these two frogmen crawling up on a rock, and they got face masks on their head, and they're crawling up on there, and I said, yeah, that's what I want to do. I want to do that right there. So I joined the Navy. I got in there, and I, of course, being ignorant as, rainwater, and I let these people tell me, well, the needs of the service come first. We want you to do this. Well, and they wouldn't let people back in those days put in for UDT right away. And I didn't know enough to ask for what I wanted, but they said, the needs of service come first. You've got a high ARI, you've got a high, scores on your test. In fact, they were high enough to go to the Naval Academy. And they said, we want to send you to the medical training because you can complete it. And I did that. In hindsight, if I had have known then and been able to think about it, I would have known that the people who came in around 1940 something for the First War or Second World War were retiring on 20 years then. The people who'd come in Korea had just got re-enlisted once and they got disenchanted. They were getting out after 10 years. A lot of people did that. So, and they still do that. So I would have realized that they had a big shortage of corpsmen because of those two reasons right there that contribute to it, and they explained they needed enough corpsmen, medical people, to support the FMF and the operational forces. So, okay, I went to that, and because the needs of the Navy came first. And when I got in there, then my instructor, my class proctor, whatever he was, the chief was in charge of proctoring my class. He had been FMF. He had been with a Marine Raider group in the Second World War. He said, oh man, this is what you need to do. So I did. I graduated second in my class. There was a pre-med student who dropped out of college that beat me by less than 1/100 of a point. I mean, it was a very slim margin. And I got my choice of duty to where to go to, so I reported into Camp Lejeune in May of '61. And went through the field med school there, and there was a Corporal McGowan, who I think is retired now as a sergeant major, probably out of, or master gunny out of Recon, but he was he was a corporal, as I say, and he was handling the, getting the troops from here to there and whatever. He was making sure we was where we were supposed to be and marching us, and he started talking to me about going to UDT. I said, man. So anyway, I started putting in for UDT. Of course, they told me, well, you're going to have to do your time here, but I was testing for it anyway, and I was able to. I went to a med battalion for a while, and then I was able to get over into Recon, which is good. That's where I met Bill Bentley and Larry. We were all good friends over there, and Skip Hartnett was there, and Major Wilder, who started the company, had been there, and I can't remember who else eventually wound up with us. Bill Ledoux. I can't remember who. Whitlock, yeah. Campbell had already gone over to Second Force from Second Recon Battalion, but we were all over together. And then finally, we kept putting in for UDT training, and they kept saying, no, you've got to be a certain rank before they would let me do that, a certain grade, E5 or and above. And I actually asked if I could change my rate. I mean, if I could become something else. No, we've sent you to a lot of training, and you're going to do this job. So I did the job. I got a set orders. I went through Navy First Class Deep Sea Diving School from there because they wanted the corpsman in UDT to be able to operate the chambers and have all the knowledge of diving medicine. I then I was in UDT. We started the training, I guess. The dive school was, we'd left Recon in September of '64. Went up to Washington, D.C. was where it was, the first class school was held at then. Went through all the training for the first class diving, medical diving technicians, all of that. Had reported into UDT 21 in May of '65. And completed that training. We joined class 33 there, and we completed all, the rest of the training required to be a frog. And I was in a platoon getting ready to go on a trip, and heard about 3rd Force getting ready to be stood up. And Major Wilder was going to be the CO, so I took off and drove down to Camp Lejeune, talked with him. He said, well, it sounds good to him. I talked with him and a couple other folks there, and they said, well, and I figured, well, there's not much going to come of that, because I'd only been away from the Marine Corps a year. It would have took just about like moving the Pentagon somewhere, to move somebody. In November, we were scheduled to leave on this trip around the 1st of December, and in November I had to go in the hospital and have my tonsils removed in our workups and in the cold water there in the Chesapeake Bay. I got tonsillitis real bad. And it was Thanksgiving, and I had a set orders come in, report to Commanding General, 2nd Marine Division. As soon as I got out of there, I was still coughing blood and everything, but I was on my way to Camp Lejeune. I was the 11th person, I think, that reported into the company. And I say I think because I know there were a lot of other guys were there and may have been off to school, but there was only 11 people there when I got there, put it that way. There may have been more people in the company that was off, because I know there were guys coming in from Anglico or something. But around the first part of December, and sometime in December there, we were putting things together, getting guys shots. They were some Vietnamese. We had some Vietnamese Marines came over to teach us language and culture and so forth. I can't remember exactly the date, but it looked like a big C-130 or a 141 flew over. And it just dropped everybody that was who's who in Marine Recon on Camp Geiger. Guys that we'd known had come in from here and there. All of a sudden we were there. And all these officers started appearing, and it was like mixing, something with a perfect chemistry together. Everybody was happy to be there. And we was ready to go to work. We was ready to go to war. So we went through a training, and I've looked in hindsight. I think all the officers were hand selected. They were excellent officers. We only had a couple that got in there that should not have been there, and they weeded themselves out. We went through a very, very good workup. A lot of things happened. And beside that, we had people off in schools, going to scuba school, going to ranger school, going to here, going to there. Some had to be jump trained. And then we deployed down to Puerto Rico, did some long-range recon patrols, stuff like that, but not just something to going outside the thing. We did diver training down there, had the submarine, the old sea line was there, and we were living on the beach over in Viegas, on the barracks there in Viegas, but we were able to use the beaches there in Viegas for certain trainings, but we were building teams. We were building a chemistry, if you will, a bonding, and then we left there. We went. I think while we were in Puerto Rico, I think maybe we may have made a couple of jumps there, some training jumps. I'm not really clear on that. And then we went to Panama to jungle warfare training. And we were the first company that has ever gone through there as a company where every person graduated as jungle experts. I mean, this company was coming together. Major Wilder and Bill Floyd had put together a wonderful plan. I mean, but the officers and just everything, it was a good chemistry. We got back, and I don't know all the workings because that time I was an E5. I don't know what all the plans, what went awry or whatever, but to move a Marine company, a recon company, with all of its TO equipment would have taken probably 2 ships. I mean, we had a lot of gear. And they decided they would deploy a detachment and bring the others over later. And we was going to come in groups. And I was sent with the first group, who was Captain Jordan as the detachment commander, and Lieutenant Douglas O'Donnell as the 2 officers, the other platoon commander, and we had a good group, 1st and 5th platoons. We deployed and went on. We went up. They took us up to Norfolk, Virginia. We went aboard the USS Boxer. Went across the Atlantic and through the Mediterranean, down through the Suez, up through the Red Sea, and finally wound up in Da Nang. Now, on the way there, we did some pretty important jobs, really, for the ship, because it was not long after the USNS Card, I think it was the ship's designation, but it was an old helicopter cover. They were using it to haul supplies to Viet Nam, and they had sank it. Some sappers had got in and sank it. So this captain was very nervous, and he literally he asked us if we would do a bottom sweep. So we took our divers and got in. We did a bottom sweep of this thing. And here again is this training that we had gone through, and it was building relations. There was a Marine helicopter squadron on there. They were just taking the new 46s over at that time, if you can believe something being new. That's already wore out now, but they were taking the squadron of those guys over. Many of them had never had the first idea about survival in the jungle, any kind of survival training, medical stuff like that. So all the way over, we were teaching them jungles, what we'd learned down in Panama. There was 2 or 3 of us that were going down to one of the ready rooms there, and so we built a relationship that it proved its worth time and time again. If one of those guys was shot down, we would go get them. We would go and try to pull them out. If we were out there and we were in a mess and a half, they would come after us. I mean, these guys literally would fly. We were on one operation, one patrol, where the guy literally flew. As long as there's nothing going to make me go to jail.
Yeah.
I'm not going to tell about stealing Jeeps or anything.
Oh, we may ask you about that.
Huh? Well,
We've all stolen something, haven't we? I stole an ambulance.
I ain't talking.
Yeah, Sandos and I were very proud. We stole an Army ambulance one night. It wasn't in use. There were no bodies in it. We just needed a lift.
yeah.
Okay. So, again, just what I'm hearing is that you had this real motivation and almost this quest, and it was self-fulfilling. So every opportunity you got to do this, you made sure that you were getting closer to it. And a lot of things came together and converged, and you're there. How did you feel about that?
About being there with.
Well,
this was a fulfillment of every dream, or we wouldn't have been there in the first place.
But
I mean, we were volunteers.
Oh, just a minute. I just want to hear about how you felt.
Well, my feelings were that I was out there with probably one of the best trained groups that the Marine Corps put together, and somehow I was selected to be the corpsman to go with these guys. So yes, I mean, you've got to feel great pride, but I felt equally, as far as private, from a professional sense, um, responsible for everybody out there. If somebody got a bullet hole in them or something like that, I was responsible for them. I tried to go on as many patrols as I possibly could. I went with every one of the platoons, not any one particular team. I ran a lot more patrols than the other guys. Sometimes I may be coming in off of one patrol and the guys would bring me a case of C ration to the airport and I'd go back to another team. But that was, and many of the times I was qualified. I functioned as an assistant patrol leader and a patrol leader. So I just felt very fortunate to be there with this particular group. And you see now, after 40-some years, we will travel from across this country just to be together one more time. It's just, so it was fulfilling. It was you feel that you're at the peak of your game, and the job that we were doing, I thought, was very professional. And if I had to go out and get in a firefight, these were the guys I wanted to be with. And we did that, and most of the time we only lost a couple of folks. That we had some got wounded, yes. But for the missions that we ran, the danger, and of the elements that we were out there operating in, I thought the professionalism of the people and the training program that we had gone through had made one of the best packages, if you will, of a group, and also the selection of the personnel. So we accomplished every mission that we were sent on, to find, to do this, to do that. We went on diving jobs where we used the skills that we had been trained with. On three diving jobs I can think of that where we recovered bodies. There were a couple of drownings. A young Marine that got blown up. We got his body out, and in fact, I went down and got the body, and while I was down, I saw ordinance on the bottom. So we were ordered back as soon as Lieutenant Capers made his report. General Walt ordered us to go back out and get all that ordnance off the ocean, or off the, not the ocean, but the river bottom. And in doing so, we were removing stuff. At one point, I brought some. We didn't really know what we were doing. That was not anything that we were trained in. And I picked up a piece of ordnance off the bottom, brought it up. There was a Marine W4 gunner there, an EOD officer was there. I handed it up to him, and he ran. I thought, man, we're doing something we shouldn't be doing, maybe. But we went ahead. I can't remember exactly. I always had in my mind that we picked up like 2,000 pieces of ordnance off the bottom there, and that was everything from small, just regular bullets to or ammunition to 120 mortars. But we brought a lot of stuff off there. A lot of it had been policed up off of the battlefield. M79 rounds that had been shot, mortars that had been fired, with the bore riding safeties already hung up in it, or for some reason it didn't hit right and didn't detonate. And we brought all this stuff up. The thought being, as I understood it later on, that they were probably transporting that stuff by boat, by sampan through there, and there was a bridge real close, and they were probably challenged by the people guarding the bridge and just dumped the boat with the idea they'd come back later and get it. And just as luck would have it, this young fellow, young corporal, who just got promoted the day before, they let him take out his first patrol, and he hit a stick mine, a vine or something across the trail, and it blew him in half, blew him out in the water, in the river. So that one, we went up on the Perfume River and picked up another fellow who was getting ready to come home and brought his body in. But and then the diving on the aircraft carrier. So in every sense, in fact, I was even a part of a team that was going to parachute in. We were going to jump in already had the chutes on setting up by the airfield, and they decided not to insert us that way, to go ahead and take us out by helicopter to where we were going, because First Force had jumped in on a patrol, and it had some complications from it, and weren't on the ground very long at all, and they were compromised, and had to come out of there. So they decided to just take us in by helicopter and do it that way. Everything that we were trained in, though, we utilized over there. All of that training, it came together, and I think the reconnaissance missions that we ran, we brought back information that even the folks in Da Nang and probably Saigon didn't want to believe. But we were seeing large buildups. We were seeing things out there that they didn't want to accept. When we were at Quezon, we were reporting things, and oh no, that's not happening. That just can't be. We were seeing troops, North Vietnamese troops, digging in on the reverse slope of 861. I mean, they were getting ready to hit Quezon, and people didn't want to believe it until they sent a patrol out and got 45 men killed. I mean, there was only one survivor out of a whole reinforced platoon, rather. So a guy by the name of Charlie West from Houston, Texas. Remember his name. I talked to him just after when he came in that day. But, you know, had they have listened to what we were telling them, maybe they could have flown some missions into there and stopped that stuff. But these guys just got eaten alive.
Let's just back up for a minute. So what was the mission of the first detachment when you deployed? When you got to Vietnam, what was the goal? What was the job? And how was that carried out?
When we first got there, we were part of Operation Hastings that went on in mid, I think it started around the first part of July, and went until the 29th of July. And we were out there with we would become a part of a Recon Group Bravo, they called it. And there was some people from the different battalion recons. We were working under First Force at the time. Major Colby was commanding the First Force. And I don't know, I'm thinking we probably ran with the three teams, the three squads there, we probably ran 3-4 patrols each. I'm trying to remember exactly. The first one we went out was kind of a soft one, and then the next couple, I mean, there was nothing easy about that, because we had the 324th B Division living out there, and they were out, it was a lot of fight going on, and we came in off of the Princeton, the USS Princeton. For that, we were part of the SLF. They had flown us to Subic Bay, and that's where we met SLF 1-5. We came in, or 2-5, whichever one it was. I'm not really certain of that now, but we had some elements from First Recon Battalion, and also First Force that we were doing, and also 3rd Recon Battalion was in there. And it was a lot of missions. Generally, 3 to 5 days were what they were putting us out there for. And on the final day, July the 29th, at exactly 10 minutes till 7, we walked into a L or a V-shaped ambush. We got hit out of it. We were coming down from one side of the mountain. We were coming into a saddle, and there were some trees growing in there. We were coming into about probably 12-15 foot high elephant grass, and on the way down we were seeing where they'd been sleeping. We were seeing, and you could smell them. You could smell their bodies and their food and stuff in that was just lingering in the grass there. And we moved on down until finally we got ambushed, and we'd gone down and we was going to make a turn around the trees rather than go crushing through them, because they looked thick, and but these guys were hid out in there. We didn't, I think later on they thought it may have been an element of the 324th B that was trying to get back to the DMZ they were going to regroup or something because they had taken some very heavy casualties, and the Marine Corps put it on them there. But we walked into the ambush. I think we had six people maybe wounded, a couple quite seriously. The point man was hit in the back. He was paralyzed in his legs, laying there screaming. The patrol leader, Staff Sergeant Hopkins, was shot through it, went through his chest and came out his back, big hole. Two people just to my rear were hit. Another guy had his eardrum blowed out, and I was just about the sixth man. I was in the patrol, but I was just about where we'd made the bend and started around, so I was right in the peak of that V or L, whatever they were shooting at us from. I don't know how long the fight lasted. I mean, it seemed like an hour, but it probably would go over a couple of minutes. But well, I think probably longer than that. But I know I had the communicator was handing me grenades, and I was throwing it into the trees, and we'd shot, and we pretty well got things quieted down. We were still taking some fire. It wasn't as hot as it had been, and I was able to get up and to take care of the wounded people, the ones that were critical or hit bad, and throw some bandage on them, and threw one over my shoulder, another one under my, and drag them back up the hill. We got out of the ambush site, so had a helicopter come in, took us all out. The wounded, all of us went out together on that, but he had to hover on the side of a hill, pretty steep, trimming the elephant grass with it, and we had to lift the wounded people up to get on there and get ourselves aboard. But we got out and got back to those guys went directly to the repos. We got back in that night to First Force, and the corpsman from First Force had been hit in the head that day, and of course at that time had been told if you get 3 Purple Hearts they send you home. Well, nobody wanted to go home. I mean, at that time we had Marines that were going down in line to get on a bird to go down to Vietnam, and none of us wanted to go home, so we didn't turn them in. And I had several pieces of frag in my legs from a grenade, I guess. So he dug that stuff out, and I sewed up his head, and we went on. Mike Laporte was his name, who later was the corpsman who they thought defected, and he was on a jump that Walter Webb led down to Da Nang, and he went over to the other side. He was married to a Vietnamese woman, or he had a Vietnamese wife. I don't know if they were married or what. And he was something, he kept extending, and I don't know what all the circumstances, but that's the person it was. So we doctored each other. The next day they exfilled us back out to the ship, and it was kind of a sobering moment when you get back aboard that ship after a fight like that. And a lot of these guys that you sat there with and had breakfast with the day that you went in or something like that, and then they start saying, well, this staff sergeant that you were talking to over here, he got killed here, and that guy got killed over there, and a lot of people are not there that you'd saw before. That's one of the first sobering things about it. I mean, it was not like we had been seeing, on the combat shows. It was not like that. There were consequences. And that made me more aware of caring for these Marines, taking care of them. Something that we had done in our training back in Camp Lejeune was when I'd gone to field med school, General Lou came and spoke at my graduation. And he said, I can send a Marine into a fight anywhere in the world, and they'll go. They won't question it, as long as they know somebody's behind them to plug a hole if they get shot. I have never read anywhere where that corpsman can't be the first person shot. when you're the only person spread out over a platoon and several operational elements, you can't be over at once. So we took our Marines, we started something that is carried on in the Marine Corps. Carried on after I went back to Navy SEALs, it carried on there, of us training each one of our people as closely as much of the as the hospital corpsmen get down there. I mean, we had these guys starting IVs, they could do anything. They carried bandages. I told them, if I crawl up to you, and if you don't have a bandage in this pocket, you ain't gonna get one put on you. Of course, they would have, but and they took care of each other. So I think that probably contributed to, things that could have been a lot worse that were not. I mean, we had some guys that were these guys were top shelf from anyway. So they just they eat it right up. In fact, we had our guys when we were getting ready to go over, and they had a dozen different shots you had to take. The Marines lined up and give each other shots. I mean, we did it under supervision, but everybody did well. And I can't think of anybody that was squeamish about it, as some people may be.
Let me
Yes.
just redirect for a minute. So you get into this unit, this very specialized unit.
Mm-hmm.
You actually go into combat with some pretty unusual kind of missions to accomplish. There were opportunities to snatch prisoners. There was absolutely an opportunity to look for a POW camp behind. So let's talk about some of those things. The scope of what you were there to do was different from the infantry. You were in a position where you were going into places that were uncharted in many ways. You might have had a map, it might have been French, it might have been something else, but you didn't know what was out there.
We were sent on missions into areas, and based on what intelligence we brought back, the commander could refocus his battle plan on it. He could know where to concentrate infantry companies into. Sometimes we were sent out ahead of the infantry companies when we had been patrolling in an area. We'd had considerable sightings or something like that, thinking that there was buildups there, and they sent the troops in. We would be up on a hill. They'd put us in 2 or 3 days before, and we'd be sitting up there and watching with the binoculars and watching them move in and tell them where there were booby traps, because you'll see guys, the Vietnamese pulling back, and they would be setting booby traps, so we could tell the Marines, this is what's going on there. We were bringing back, intelligence on camps, and sometimes they would send us out. On one mission I went on was to quieten a 57 recoilless up on the side of the hill. They wanted us to go in and try to take that thing out. They were up there shooting down on a battalion that was camped there right close to that rock pile. I can't remember the group that was camped there, but they were shooting down at them. So they wanted us to go in and go up the hill and try to get them. And of course, we got run out of there. We had barely got into the edge of the woods, and they were trying to encircle us, and we had to kind of fight our way out of that deal. And there wasn't we didn't have a lot of ammunition left when we came out of there. We'd had 4 helicopter gunships had expended all of their ammunition, and had brought in some fast movers, Phantoms or whatever they were, and they had done some bombing and strafing, and finally when they were able to come in and get us, because the mountain just opened up. Before we knew it, we were laying there looking up when we got down, I was looking up a firing trail and looking right at the machine gun, but the guy that wasn't there at the time. But whenever they realized that we were in their territory, they started trying to get around us. But they got us out of there, and that would have been that type, which would have been a direct action type mission. The majority of the time was to gain intelligence, reconnaissance, as you say, a prisoner snatch sometime, which was a valuable, very valuable to get one of those guys, and we had one of our teams that was successful in that, a person who would, I think he provided such high intelligence that even some of the folks in Da Nang could not understand what he was talking about. They brought people in from Saigon from to the counterintelligence folks, but this guy started talking in terms of corps and divisions and stuff like that. He was some kind of a high level fella. I think maybe I don't know whatever happened to him, but based on that information there, and it was one of our platoons that had done it just a couple of days before, is when we went on the mission to go up to Bac Ma, which was a resort that up in the just west of Phu Bai there, and it was a place that was reported to have had 7 swimming pools, quite a French resort, and it was also thought to be the headquarters of the Communist Party in South Vietnam, Cos Vinh they called it, and we were going to try to work our way into there. Now the team that had snatched this guy also had stayed in there, and they got into quite a heavy firefight and had some folks wounded. They had several body count when they came out of there, so we wanted to get right back in. They put us out there to run the point for a company that was it 1-4, Bravo 1-4, I think, and Colonel Westerman was commanding, and we were just the point element, and then at night we would, after a movement of a day, we would come into the headquarters section area that night, and the Marines would take the perimeter, which led to a very interesting situation we found ourselves into. We were in a place where these mountains, very steep mountains, came in, narrow valley at the bottom, and it looked like all these big mountains up here is like everything kind of dumped into this place we were in. And we stayed there that night. We slept in a dry stream bed, which we had encouraged not to do. We had encouraged the company commander not to stay there. The Boy Scout won't sleep in a dry stream bed. And told him, it feels like rain, looks like rain, smells like rain. He said, it's not going to. Well, the next morning, just about the crack of dawn, it started to rain. And we'd had a kind of a restless night before. Some fella, one of the Marines out on the perimeter, had got turned around his hole. He was went to sleep on guard apparently, and got turned around, and he heard noise out in front of him, and he threw a grenade out there. Well, where he was throwing grenades was right back into the CP where we were at. So that took a little bit of quieting down. A machine gun, a couple of them got antsy and fired off, and they got that calmed down. So the next morning people are kind of edgy anyway, and then here comes this rain, and I was trying to make a cup of hot cocoa, from the sea rations, and it seemed like there was no time to where our feet were starting to get wet. It never even got my cocoa made. Put the gear on, and they were, getting ready to go, and it was 15, 20 minutes, maybe half hour at the longest, that we'd gone from having our feet wet to waist deep in water. We had a company of Marines that were split in threes, some part over on this mountain, some over here, and here we are on this island out in the middle, and a lot of people that couldn't swim, with all kinds of equipment, gear. Thank God the foresight of some of the new guys that had come in. We'd also had recently been augmented by another platoon of 15 people that had come in. And I thought, well, these guys carrying this climbing rope, what in the world are they doing that? Well, they had 2 climbing ropes. Thank God they had them, because it saved a lot of people's life. Here again, the training that we had, we were able to, Sergeant Larry Keene, he anchored it, tied a rope around my waist. I swam the thing across the stream, tied it off on the other tree. He was able to tighten it up and start shuffling people across this rope. We got the people evacuated out of the island in the middle of the stream while the stream's coming up. I don't know how much equipment got lost that day, but I mean, it was a lot of stuff. Machine guns, bags, stuff floating down the stream. Able to get the people evacuated over. I know that he and I personally probably assisted 24 people going across that rope. These guys were scared. They were non-swimmers. And the situation that we were in, 2 mountains right here, at any time they could have opened fire on us. So the situation was very tense, but we were able to get those people across those stream, and we were personally helping them, he and I. He was an excellent swimmer and a waterman, scuba diver and all. So we were able to get those guys to the other mountain, all centralized to where they could come out with a helicopter, and it took some time to get helicopters in there. Then they started bringing them in, and to land and to get, it was just, I mean, they were knocking tree limbs off and everything to get to a place to get these people evacuated. We got everybody out of there without anybody being hit or, you know, some kind of an assault on us, because we were sitting ducks that day for sure. I mean, there's just no way for it. I don't know that it was ever reported. I don't know why. I mean, it should have been reported. There was lessons to be learned from that. First of all, if you don't sleep in a dry stream bed. And, but we were thankful, and probably the next day, I don't remember what to do, but that's how we celebrated the Marine Corps birthday in 1966 on that mission. It lasted 2 or 3 days, and but it was, you know, we got out of there. And
when did you rotate? What was that like? And speaking of lessons learned, after you rotated, did you make an assessment personally of what had happened to you and the detachment, and what did you conclude?
I rotated about 2 weeks, I think, before some of the others, because I got a set orders in from, of course, from the Navy, and theirs become headquarters Marine Corps. So I didn't get to come back with my family. I had to leave them, and of course it was difficult. And while I was over there, I'd had a young son born I'd never seen. So I was looking forward to getting home, but I didn't want to leave these guys. In fact, I went on a patrol with a new lieutenant that had just come in the company, the 5-day patrol the last week I was there. Came in one day, packed my gear, and they took me to the airport the next. Lieutenant Rudrick, I think was his name, and we brought, as luck would have it, we sat down one night to hide in the bushes, and I sat down on a bunch of mortar rounds. And I sat there all night on these mortar rounds. I didn't know if I was on a booby trap or what. But what I'd set down on was a cache. So each one of us come out there the next day, and we always carried parachute cord with us, and we had, I think each one of us probably carrying about 8 of those mortar rounds, and got on the helicopter and there was a whole bunch of mortar rounds that we took out of there that they could have used for something. I was reordered back to Underwater Demolition Team 21, where I'd come from, and got a telephone call while I was on leave. After I'd flown out, I went up to Okinawa and processed through there and then back home. Took a while to get there, and I finally got home, got a telephone call. Would you mind not taking the full 30 days, because we're really short here, and we really would like if you could come in early and just, so I said, sure. Probably no more than 15 days from the time that I had left Vietnam that I went and reported into UDT 21. They immediately put me into a platoon that was leaving in 3 weeks, going to the Caribbean. I was made the leading petty officer in it, or the senior enlisted. Had two young officers who later became great SEAL warriors. But Captain Rick Woolard, who retired as a Navy captain, he was an ensign then coming out of UDT training. Another guy by the name of Lou Boink. And off we went to the Caribbean. So probably about 5 weeks from the time I left Vietnam, the guys in Vietnam, I was gone on a Caribbean cruise. Got back from that in December, and then a group of us were transferred over to SEAL team. And I was in the SEAL team maybe 10 days. Still looking at all this fancy equipment that they had issued to me, and my name was called, and they said, we've just sent a platoon to Vietnam, and we've got to bring a guy back. We want to send you over there. We want you to go over and replace him. So I went back to Vietnam and did 2 more tours with the SEAL team. But, you know, I tried to stay in contact with the company as much as I could. I think over the years that the guys have reached out for each other. We've used every asset we could to get people back together. People like Larry Keene, Lou Kern, Ron Luzon, and others we've attempted to bring these reunions together. Each year we have these reunions. The people, they come from everywhere to be together again. At one more time, at one more weekend, to be together. You know, it was just, I think the chemistry, the bonding that was made under those arduous combat conditions have been that thing that cemented, that has got us together, continued on. I mean, here we are today, doing a memorial service for one of our commander, and here we are together. And you know, but I think it's just a tribute to the training for the quality of Marine that we were. I think the job that this company did over there has been probably unequaled. The people that followed on that we never got to meet, when we come together, we're brothers. And you know, what greater tribute what greater legacy would you want to write for your life than to include those people that you did it with? You know, it's just been an honor. It was something that we would have, each one of us would have died for the other one. But we had a greater desire to make that guy out there die for us. I'd rather see one of those guys out there, on the other side, than one of ours. We took it personal. The first person we lost, our Lieutenant Douglas O'Donnell. It was the most miserable patrol that I've ever been on in my life, and we had just been inserted just a few minutes before in fact, the helicopter inserted us, and then went back and got his team and took them in. We got hit on the insert, and he was hit in the heart, killed. When we heard it, it was absolutely, I mean, I saw Marines ball up on the ground and cry. Men on patrol. I mean, this hurt. It was something that we took personal, and we didn't cut any slack after that. I think it made the men more determined, more professional, because they had drawn first blood, and we didn't like it. Yes, we had had people wounded before. We'd already lost several to wounds had been sent home. But whenever you have that, I'll never forget the code word for a wound was a screwdriver, was the code word. And the one for KIA is a wrench. And when we heard that come over there, our screwdriver said, you don't have to hurry that medevac because our screwdriver's now wrench. I mean, he had just died, and everybody just hurt. To make things even worse, we'd got ourselves into a thicket of some kind. We'd gone back in these vines. We spent 5 days in there crawling around on our hands and knees to find our way out of this mess. I never seen anything like it. That thing must have been 5 miles across. But we'd like to never got out of there. And it was, but it was a very miserable day. Now, again, to the professionalism of the people, and I think the commanders' love for their people, for their troops. When that helicopter come in and picked us up, Captain Jordan was on that helicopter. And when we got back, because he knew that there was going to be questions and we would want to know. Our platoon commander's just been killed. We'd want to know about it. We got back to the airport as soon as he could talk, and he briefed us and told us exactly what had happened. And it had to be hard. So after that, though, I saw a more of a determined, things got really serious. And then not long after that, as some of the operations of Fubai where the river happened, and but we made contact. I don't know how, probably 80% of the time we had some kind of a shootout or something out there. And as you know, when there's 5 people, 6 people at the most, you've got to have a special bonding and a special love for that guy that you're depending on for your life. I mean, you just got to have that feeling that you just feel good about it. You get out there and people are shooting at you, and you're trying to take them out. You've got to depend on these other folks with you. And all of us felt that way about the other one. It was, I think it was an experience. That training there was something that I took on with me and the rest of my career. As I went into SEAL teams, I mean, it was the same situation. I wound up running part of the SEAL training, but I always tried to inspire that to everybody that I taught. We started a training program there of training the SEALs in the same way that we'd done with the Marines. In fact, we had the people from Field Medical School come up to SEAL team and teach it to our people. But I always taught it to my own folks. Some of the other guys didn't feel good about it, but I wanted mine to know that. So we started doing that. Now they send them to regular EMTs. They make EMTs out of them, and some become paramedics. They've got a lot of professionalism, and the Marine Corps is doing the same thing. I think, or at MARSOC maybe. But they were lessons that we learned when we were putting things together. Yes, there was a plan, but every plan has got to bend. You've got to have some flexibility to adjust as you're going through. If this is not working, let's shift it. You can change everything except when you're falling out of an airplane, you're going to hit the ground. But there's things you can do about that too. Things that didn't go well for us, or equipment that didn't work well for us, we made that change pretty quickly. And we had, thank God, people in there that were experts in just about every field you come to. Equipment, tactics, you name it. I mean, we had guys that were probably the best there were. They got us home alive, so it worked. Yeah.
Let me ask another question, and then you can say whatever you want. If you want to take a break, we can. I know that when the first and the fifth went over there, again, a lot of attrition. Some of the best people were actually taken and put in other units to make that work. People were wounded. what was that feeling like? What was the feeling about the rest of the company? Did you feel still attached? Were you looking forward for the next detachment to come? How did that work?
When we deployed, of course, there's excitement in there. There's probably, I think, a bit of pride that we were selected for that because everybody wanted to go. I mean, we were a group that had gone through a training program that started at 5 in the morning, I think, 6 in the morning, and ended up at 2300 each night. The last 2 hours was Vietnamese language and culture. Lieutenant Captain Kim, I think was one guy's name, and I can't remember the other Vietnamese Marine's name, but they were there, and they, of course, I didn't do very well in Vietnamese language. So they just shook their head at me. But after we'd gone through all of the preparation and all, then we were a group that was selected. I think even on the bus trip to Norfolk, Virginia, which they took us out in the middle of the night and drove us up there, be there first thing in the morning, I think even that bus trip we started missing the other guys. This is like being pulled away from your family. So, and there was always that hope, and we were excited that the other guys would be coming. In September, when the third came in, and I don't know, I can't remember exactly when they left the States, but I think they got there around September, October time frame. They joined us at Phu Bai. But the information, as far as I know, that we were gaining over there, we were sending back, and but it was a you know, there was a separation there. People riding back and forth, staying in contact, and we were looking forward to the rest of it coming over. Now, in the meantime, Major Wilder has got promoted, and he was inbound into country and became the battalion commander of 3rd Recon Battalion. So he got us down there under him. I don't think the talents that we had were probably, a lot of people didn't understand how to use us, but he did, because he had come up with the conception. So we started being used on more Force Recon type missions, and also more direct action missions. And in other words, it wasn't all just go out there and sneak around the stealth. If they wanted to use us on something like that, then we did. When the other guys got in there, it was like homecoming. It's like, you know, you've been away and you get home. You know, there's a lot of joy. There was happiness, and we stayed right together. We in December we started sending people up to Khe Sanh, and pretty soon we were all moved to Khe Sanh. After in January we were all reunited up there and started working in a new area. We did have people lost. One of my best friends was in the 1st platoon, and he got hit on I don't know how many missions. He probably didn't run over 2 or 3. Excuse me. Sorry, but he was hit hit his collarbone and ricocheted down the spine. He was paralyzed from here down. And so he was gone. We never saw him again. I never saw him again until he died. And he lived another 20 years or so after that. I mean, he worked for civil service. We lost people. Sometime our officers would be sent over to augment one of the other recon outfits. When Captain Jug Spainhour was killed, we sent one of our officers over there until they could get somebody to replace him and keep that element of that was with the 26 Marines when they came in working. We would occasionally lose a small detachment of our people that they would send over for advisor type, maybe some Army units, something like that. So yes, we were always losing people, thank God we had enough that could step up and take over it. Toward the end, we had lost people. We had wore down to we even had our intel guys out there, our two, I think one of the supply guys was going in the field, parachute riggers out there working patrols. I mean, we had everybody out in the bush. None of those guys, it was not an easy run for anyone. Everybody took the turn out there. There's only one guy, I think, that never went out, was our motor T guy. And but everybody else was out there, and they, as I say, they just stepped up. And as we lost people, we got in these replacements, and sometimes those guys just didn't. They weren't supposed to be there. If you take one of those in the field with you, and he turned out to be trainable, you didn't have a long time to train him. But if you've got some guy that just eat his sea rice and just rear back and throw it out and make a lot of noise, and there's 5 of you out there, that is not good. I mean, you got to take. There's a special person to do a recon mission. It's not just anybody. And we found out, so we went through several of those folks that they would come in, and but we had several of them that came in up at while they were in we were in Quezon, one being a corpsman that I had met on the ship whenever we were riding it. Talked this guy out of the 26th Marines, and finally, after he'd done a little while there, they were willing to turn him loose, and he came over to us. Corpsman by the name of Moss, and we had some other replacements that wind up being really, really good recon Marines, and they were trainable. They tried hard and were good, and those guys, some of them were killed also. Andy Marcotte, he was one of the guys killed. But we lost friends. We lost guys, Thompson and some of the other folks, and it just hurt. It hurts right now. You think about it right now after 40-some years, and it eats at you, Especially what we did. We didn't finish things. We weren't allowed to finish things. Put it that way. The halls of Congress didn't allow us to do what we went there to do. I can be thankful on the professionalism of all of our people, because whenever we would get one of these new guys in, everybody was on him and teaching him, training him. Don't wear your gear this way, put it on this way, don't do this, don't do that. But they took that man and they shaped him up, and he fit right on in there. And there's sometimes they wouldn't, but most of the time these guys turned out to be an asset. We then, after we'd been there for 6-7 months, something like that, there was some of the folks that started leaving. Our communicators. I know we lost 1 or 2 communicators, and I don't know why, but some of those guys, they started having head problems. I don't know if it was the stress of all the time that guy, when you're surrounded and you don't know exactly if you pop a twig that it's going to get you shot, and all of a sudden you got that swells going in your ear constantly. I don't know what it was, but I saw this happen more than once to communicators. We would get other guys to come in there, and they would fill in well, humping that big, some of the heavy equipment. The radios back in those days wouldn't reach more than about 10 clicks, and it took a lot of batteries and stuff like that to hump. And trying to think what other changes that happened to us, but as the original 37 of us that went over there probably wasn't over a dozen of us that were left at the end of it, because we had people that had Some had gone off to work for and various other special projects with the PRU program, the Phoenix program. We'd had some guys that had gone over to rifle companies. One platoon lost its platoon commander. He just stayed just a short while and he went away, which was in that case probably good, because we had another fellow waiting in the wings who had been a gunnery sergeant in the company, but he'd picked up second lieutenant, and he came in to be one of our officers. An excellent, really a good choice. He was just a good guy, and here we all continued the brotherhood. We were all working together, doing the mission we were trained to do. I am trying to think of other something that may have happened to have caused a shift in the way we did things. I can't think of anything. We had one platoon, one patrol out that were running the element for a rifle company, and they were ordered back up and down this same trail several times, even against the advice of the patrol leader, a young lieutenant. He was still ordered to go back up this trail, and they got hit by either a command detonated or a booby trap. And there was like 9 folks on that patrol, and all but one of them was took down. I mean, we had guys that lost legs, kidneys. The dog that was on the patrol, he took probably half of the shot, or it would have been a lot worse. But even the corpsman who was next to the rear security, and he was turned around talking to the rear security at the time, but he took a round through the nose and one run through the throat. Didn't hit anything, but he was wounded too. And the other folks, I mean, they were just in a big pile out there, and everybody thought they were going to die, and they were all trying to reassure each other, and thank God that they didn't get some kind of an attack came in, and until the infantry company could get there and set a perimeter around them and got them medevaced out. Now, when the news came that we had a patrol hit out there, by the time it got in, they were a group of us there waiting to help carry those bodies off. We wanted to see our brothers, what had happened to them. I stood right there in the operating room. I knew the battalion commander at that medical battalion company that was there, and he allowed me to stand in the operating room and watch these guys get surgery. I mean, I was right there with Lieutenant Capers in one room, and I forgot the young fellow's name now, but they took his leg off. He was quite angry about it. Says, "Why didn't you save my leg?" Well, how could I? You didn't have anything from the bottom of your calf to your ankle. Everything was blowed away. Strip of meat holding it on. You had nothing. Huh? Nikolai was his name, and he was a brute of a guy. And it hurt so much to see that happen to him. I mean, this guy had scholarships to go play football. He was a weightlifter. I mean, this guy carried an M60 and a rucksack full of food. He ate more than 3 people should have. But he was just a healthy young fella, and to see him take off his leg, it really hurt. To see my friend who had been a staff sergeant went over with us, who was now a second lieutenant, laying there with a dozen or so holes in him, his arm, leg broke. I mean, he was hit really bad. Another kid in another room there, they took out a kidney. So we had a group we lost a whole team of people that day. They were just gone away. We never saw them. For years, we didn't see them. All of those separations, any time that, I think even before we went over there, if a guy went on leave, we missed him there, and when he got back, everybody wanted to find out what he did on leave. Some people even come in early off of leave. think there was just something that I've never seen in another, in any other company or any other group that I was with, you know. That I think it began the first day, as I said before, you know, when all these people started coming together and we were being reunited. These were guys that we'd served with before from here to there. And they were coming back in from, one guy came from Paris, France on embassy duty. Another guy came out of Afghanistan. But we had guys coming from here, yonder, and about that, and we hadn't seen each other for a couple of years, and it was just like a big homecoming. Now let's get it all over with and get to work. And that's what it started. It was a rude awakening when the training program started. We was well prepared. Where do we need to go next? What do we need to look at? Huh?
Thank you.
Is that it, or is there any other missions that you want me to talk about?
No, I think right now that's great. So what you've given us is a sense of where things started, and again, what I was getting out of it was the fact that all of these people wanted to be there and be together.
Well, another mission we ran while we were there was there had been a young fella that had come and turned himself in, a Vietnamese. This young fella had been a Viet Cong, had got to where he wasn't terribly gung-ho, as we called it. He didn't want to be there. He didn't want to do that. So they put him in jail. They put him in a prisoner camp. In this prisoner camp, he had saw what he identified as 4 Americans. There was some question on one of them as to whether he may have been an Australian or an American. CIA had this information. They'd gone to the Army, the Green Beret, with that, and they said, no, we won't do that. We won't. They came to the Marine Corps. They come to 3rd Force Recon. We wouldn't turn down anything. You know, we'd go move the Golden Gate Bridge if you wanted us to. We'd figure out a way to get that done. So we went on that mission. There was a hand-selected group of folks, 10 of us, I think, with the prisoner, with the, let's say prisoner, the Chuhoi as he would have been. Actually, that term had not come out, I don't think, prior to that, but anyway, we had that guy with us, had a staff sergeant who was an interpreter, a guy named Prefontaine, who later became a warrant officer, and I don't know how far he did go up in the Marine Corps, but he went on the patrol with us. Now, I think there was some information that we probably didn't hear until we got back, and exactly where we were at, and I think there's some question marks there, but we got finally put in there on the 13th of January. Weather was terrible, and we had our plan, and Captain Jordan led this, and Lieutenant Capers was the assistant patrol leader. And we got inserted the first day, and God, it was just, you talk about the armpit of the world. This place was thick. You couldn't even walk in it. The only way we found to walk was through the stream, wade the stream. So we had set up the first night we got there, just got into a perimeter and did our normal, 50% sleeping, and next morning we got up and started to move through the stream, and this prisoner, I keep calling him a prisoner, he wasn't a prisoner, the Chuhoi, kept seeing places that he had seen. Now the story he had told us is that they would be marched from so far, and they would go to this, down the stream, they would march, and they had fields that they grew corn in, maize as he called it, and they grew corn and other things, but all of them would be marched down there to go work, and then they'd go back and be chained up that night. And the camp guard, the camp commander there was a woman, a North Vietnamese woman. Seemed to be those women ran a lot of the POW camps over there. He started seeing things that he identified with. He said, I can remember this right here. I can remember that. The funny thing about a Vietnamese, or this young fellow, was he couldn't tell you if he walked 1 day or 3. He walked so many days, so much time he walked with the sun over here, and he did. But we were trying to back trail what he had told us to try to identify a certain area where he was at, where he had been, rather, where the camp was at. And we came up with a fairly close idea. The second day, we were walking in this stream, and we kept noticing leaves and limbs and stuff, freshly cut stuff, floating down. Finally, we walked up to about 25 meters behind 2 of the guards from the camp that he recognized, and they were cutting back the sides of the stream that was growing over. They didn't want the things growing over. So we walked along behind these guys for, a good ways. I don't know how far, several clicks. And they went around a corner, and we could hear them starting to talk to some others. So we thought, well, they might be. So we hastily went up the side of the mountain and set up in a perimeter up there. Got out of the stream and got away. And actually, some of those that went down, and they saw where we'd gone out. They saw the wet trail, which you can't stop. And they saw that, and they went by, and I think maybe a couple of the rear security that were left down there may have had one of them come in and look, and they may have seen each other. These guys felt that they were seen, but the guy didn't fire. He just backed up, and they went on. Well, after that, we had guys walking up and down the stream with BARs at port arms. So we, in all likelihood, were compromised at that point. We spent another one night, second night. It would bring us up to the 16th. The morning of the 17th is when we went in we got close enough to where we knew that we could, he felt comfortable that we could make it into the camp. And we got to the site. Now they wanted pictures of this thing just to confirm that there was a camp there or whatever, if it was empty. And it was empty when we got there. When the young fellow, his name has slipped me right now, but he was starting to get the camera out to take pictures of it, and we had some aggressors come in. Had guys coming in, and they'd made a shield like of tree leaves that they blended right in with and you couldn't hardly see them coming, but they were moving. They had raincoats and everything. They were totally camouflaged with these things. And they made their way in, and there was some shooting, and some guys that were coming in got killed. So we started to make our trail out of there. And I'd carried some demolition with me, which part of my job there was to have this. So I had demo, and I had some shots, made some shots up. We thought we were going to have to blow an LZ for a helicopter to come in. And I set my charge on the tree to cut it down. There was one big tree which would have given enough room for a 46 to come in there. We didn't know if we were getting out with the radio. Ron Yerman and Ron Luzon were the 2 communicators who were with us, and both these guys were excellent. I mean, they're Anglo guys. They were good. And they didn't know if they were getting anything, but we were far enough out to where there was 2 mountains that had radio relays on it. So one of these relays apparently had picked up something from us. Nothing came. We had guys following us, going up and down the trail looking for what happened to us and trying to find us. So we decided, well, it's time to go up the mountain. We need to be on top of the mountain somewhere. We don't stay down here anymore. I took my demo. We started going up the mountain, got on top of it, and still had already taken the whip off and had the tape on the antenna on the radio, so we could move. Got up on top of the mountain, and we could hear warning shots, or the way that they worked their way together. You hear a shot over here and a shot over here, and pretty soon they're getting closer. We could hear guys on 3 sides of the mountain coming up on us. And just about dusk, we were ready to make a stand for it that night, I guess you'd say. We didn't know how many was coming or what was going to happen. And we didn't know that whether the radio was working because it had been wet and other complications. But apparently they had heard our transmission. We just couldn't get anything back. They couldn't talk back to us. About just before dusk, or just before sun, got dark, we heard this sound coming, and there was a Huey gunship and a CH-46. One of the guys that we had talked to, that we had taught jungle survival and other skills that they needed, from that squadron of CH-46, he flew out there by himself, with the 2 gunship, and got us. And he had to winch. He hovered probably about 70 feet up, I guess, because the triple layer canopy really. And he winched us up one at a time, and we were taking gunfire while he was doing that. You're coming out there and it's raining 50 caliber shells out the side of that bird, and little guys are shooting at you. Thank God as soon as I got up inside the chopper, and I don't know what number I was, I generally was in about the middle of things. As soon as I got in there, I started looking at each person that came in. Is he bleeding? And thank God we only had one man that had any kind of a wound on him, and it was a lieutenant. He was hit in the cheekbone. He got grazed with something. But we made it out of there, and from there General Walt sent us on R&R. Came back from that, went to Quezon, and enjoyed the beauties of Quezon. And it really was a beautiful place up there until it started getting all bombed up, and I guess it got, but it was beautiful up on that plateau, and just a pretty place.
Let's go back. After you got out, did you discover where there was?
I don't know that we really know where there was, but some things that we found out about where there was, or were there, was that there was tigers in there. This Chuhoy had told the interpreter that there were tigers there as big as beef, as big as a bull. And that was where there was also probably the roughest terrain that we saw over there, and there was a lot of that. But it was absolutely impossible. So where we were at was in a place where there had not been any operations before. It was in a place that had not been, anything had been in there to destroy it, any bombing or anything like that. Could it have been across the border? Possibly. We've had those occasions where things happen and we wind up across the border. Accidents, whether planned or not, sometimes happen, and so it was possible, I guess, but there was a lot at that time in '66 that there hadn't been bombing missions into it and artillery and stuff, and this was certainly farther out than, I mean, I was watching my compass on the way there, and I knew that we flew over Nam Dong, which is where Captain Roger Donnelly got the first Medal of Honor over there. It was a SF camp, and we went over top of that, so, and continued flying into the sun. I don't know where we were at. Somewhere out west of where Roger Donnelly was, though. But it was certainly some difficult terrain, and again, it's just a testimony to the quality of people that Captain Jordan had to choose from to complete a mission like that. Other people had turned it down. We completed it. Which was the case with everything that I think we and the guys that followed us. I'm sure the service that they gave their commanders and so forth was the same quality of anything we did when the rest of the company came. But it was a great joy when the company finally came in, and I know the reunion with the other guys that we hadn't seen so long. It was homecoming.
But it was also a testament to the relationship, the camaraderie, and inspiration that you provided people that you trained.
It was. It was a great testimony, and that camaraderie. I think that you hear a lot of people say that which is built under or forged under, that relationship that is forged under combat is stronger than any bond, any other bond, and I think that proved it right there. And just for the fact that we're here today, I mean, people from California, from Boston, Massachusetts, from all parts of the country have come here to pay tribute to our fallen commander. I think that speaks a lot. I mean, and there's people that just would not have missed this, and a lot of others would like to be here. I know that. For whatever reason, I mean, health issues or whatever, some of them couldn't be here, but they've called. And so I certainly, it was that bonding and that's brought us here together, and that same thing it carried on from the people that were initially trained to the new guys, to the new replacement. I say new guys, they were new to us. They were just replacement troops to come in. It was equally, I think, a testimony to them for how quickly they picked up the skills that we had been, but it also the professionalism of the Marines that were training these guys. So but it all worked. You know, it takes all those elements, the right mix going in there to make a nice cake, but it also takes a nice, the baker has got to have his plan too. And the finished product, of course, everybody gets to enjoy it. I think, I don't know if anybody that didn't prosper or benefit from the, let's say prosper is the wrong word, but benefit from the intelligence we brought in and the missions that we completed over there, and under very difficult conditions. Long patrols out there, laying out there wet, 7-10 days, not much food. I would only carry 1 can of sea rations and 1 fruit per day, and I carried extra grenades. I would carry as many as 25 grenades with me. I like them. I like anything that makes big noises and stops people from shooting at you. And so I'd throw a bunch of them. And I would take food out of my pack and put extra grenades in there. I figured I'd eat when I got back home. But I wanted to get home with the guys I went out with. I didn't want to see anybody go. But yeah, I think that the professionalism, the quality of work that we did probably exceeded expectations of those people that even were responsible for putting this together, which is a tribute to the quality of individuals that were selected to start out with and passed that along. You know, replacement guys were just as good as we were. Maybe they didn't have all the training that we had, but they were just as good because they were part of us. And, you know, I just soon go back and do it all over again.
Would you?
I would. If, you know, if we were sent, yeah, I would. I go right today. Probably a little difficult to get a pistol belt around me, you know, and get me in some of the rigging that we had, but yeah. The only thing I'm sorry for is that we did lose people. I lost friends, and some of it has caused permanent separation. I mean, even by some folks that left that bonding, they had issues that happened. Some people, maybe they call it PTSD, maybe, that they don't want to be around us again. We had some that were, of course, lost forever. But I think a lot of the guys right today would say, yeah, if this guy's going, I'm going with him. I mean, that's what we're here. We're doing a mission right now. But I couldn't say that. Well, I would. If there was shooting to be done, I'd want to be right in the middle of it. I'd never wanted to miss anything. And I was afraid I would. I was afraid somebody'd go out there and get into something that I'd miss it. You know, they'd have something to talk about I wouldn't know about. So I really tried to go with as many patrols. If we'd have a group that was coming in and, you know, have a week's rest, and I'd go with another group. Different platoon, different team, but I think probably all of our corpsmen did that. We were able to grab a couple other folks while we were there. I forgot to mention that. One guy was by the name of Billy Ray Smith. And Billy Ray was he's from up in Alabama. He had real thick glasses. He'd been in the 2nd Recon Battalion with us. But because of the glasses, because of his poor vision, he couldn't go to the diving schools, to the jump schools. He couldn't qualify for that, so he wasn't allowed to, he couldn't make it with us. We got over in country, and here he comes into 3rd Recon Battalion, and we got him assigned over with us. He was the guy that was hit through the neck and through the nose with Lieutenant Capers, and he was the guy that took charge of that patrol. When everybody else was down, he took charge of it. He watched over the people until the infantry got there. He made sure that they were medevaced out, our people were, and he stayed with the gear till they sent back a helicopter and brought all of our gear out of there. That corpsman stayed right with it. Again, a testimony to those replacements that we got in. Just recently, he was awarded a Bronze Star. Several of our folks, some of the awards that he got caught, fell through the cracks, pushed out in the shuffle or whatever, but his came through. The commanding general from Marsac flew into a little town called Uriah, Alabama. In his plane, he brought his sergeant major, he brought a group of people in there and presented that Bronze Star. Uriah, Alabama's probably never seen anything like that. I've never seen anything like that. I've never seen a Marine Corps general ever walk up and say, well, two of us drove up and met him. Guy jumped out of his car, put on his blouse. Every general I'd ever seen in my life was looking at me like, you better get out of my way. You better get out of my presence, you know. This guy walking around throwing his arm around like we was in the third grade together. I really and honestly have never seen anything like that. But they went and they presented Billy Ray his wife, her Bronze Star, after 40 plus years. Sadly, he had passed away a year before. Also, we found out that they had done something to his eyes, and he had more glasses in years. But he had these glasses. I looked like he needed to see an eye dog or something. It's really thick glasses, and but he was a tough man in the field. He was a good operator. He was a good Marine. He was a corpsman who spent most of his life with the Marine Corps. After he came back, he went back to 2nd Recon Battalion. And as far as I know, he retired from there. Trying to think of other instances that would bring out the I know that several of those folks that were initially went over with us, who were transferred out into units where it was the PRU program. We had 3 people went to that while I was there. They did excellent. They did a really good job. They were very professional, and I think probably the folks that were running that program were quite happy with those guys. We had the other guys that were sent out to, I'm trying to think what the unit was. I don't know, it was a CAC unit or something like that. One of those type, you know, where they've got a group of our people living with some of the Vietnamese. And that worked out great. So wherever these guys went, they were stars. You know, they were rock stars, you know, you might say. They were the guy that could go in and take charge of it because they'd been around people that could take charge of things. They had been passed on. And we had people that were some of our enlisted men that wind up retiring as colonels, come out of there. I think all of the enlisted people that I initially went in there with, except 2 or 3 of us, wound up retiring as officers, and the rest of us retired as E9s, as sergeant major, master gunner sergeants. I retired from the Navy as a master chief hospital corpsman with 6 years in grade as a master chief, or 16 years in grade. I spent over half of my 30 years as a E9. Again, I can attribute that to the people that I served with, the motivation that had to be in that particular unit, and the desire that you have to put into being there. I mean, that carries on through life. So I left there. I worked in other programs, but I studied hard, worked hard, had good evaluations, and was promoted a lot quicker than I'd ever thought about. I mean, I would have probably been happy to have done it at less, but I was, you know, it was all great, and I probably a very sad day for me was when I left the troops in Phu Bai, rotating back in 1967. And it was equally a sad day when I retired from the Navy after 30 years. I was heartbroken. I still am. I would put that uniform back on and go right today if I could. I love the military. I love the camaraderie, and I love the people that I was with.
Do you ever think back about that day in the movies, watching Darby's Rangers?
I've watched the movie a few times since, and actually met some men that were in Darby's Rangers. That one, that movie, there was also one on that had Vic Morrow in it at the time was called Combat, I think. That was one that we watched. Even when we were doing our training, so there wasn't a lot on television back in that mid-60s period. The song that came out of Barry Sadler, that Green Berets, the Ballad of the Green Berets, was another great inspiration to us, I think. It was a motivation, if you will. Talk about jumping out of airplanes. Recon likes jumping out of airplanes. So it was a motivation to us. The little combat thing, I think it gave us a false sense of security, because once we got over there and those guys started shooting back at us. It's a lot different than anything you've ever done, just on a regular firing range, or some of the training in Panama where they'd shoot at you with a BB gun or something like that. I mean, this is real, and it's quite sobering, especially seeing some of the folks that were hit, and that's something that I can remember forever. The people that we had hit bad, and trying to open the bandages as I was trying to. The guy that was shot on the 29th of July. I mean, there was a lot of blood, and something else happened to that I'd like to mention: the professionalism that we taught these young troops. We had a young man, the point man, who was hit in the spine, had fell face frontwards whenever he went down in a red anthill. He had those red ants all over his face and head. He was screaming. He was in pain. Red ants, one of them made me scream. I hate them. And that young man was screaming. His sergeant called out to him to shut up, you'll draw fire. Not another peep. I got up there, and he had those things on him, and we got him off, got him bandaged up. But I think that's a great tribute to the training we went through. I mean, we looked at, I mean, they shot at sound. Later on, the staff sergeant that got wounded and paralyzed, he was talking. They'd sprang an ambush and they'd hit some people, and may have set it off a little bit too fast or too soon, and not everybody was in the kill zone, so somebody got away, and they went down looking for him, and he was probably talking and drew fire. The guy just shot at fire and hit him. They didn't see the fella. So I think those things right there go back to the basic, nuts and bolts, the ways of doing this and that and the other things you don't do comes to mind. All right.
Yes, thank you.
I hope I hadn't ruined anything.
Camera's still functioning.
Huh? Well.
You said you didn't break his camera.
Good.
Did you want to say your name and your position? Like, my name's, and I'm a corpsman.
Okay.
I don't know if it's cool or not.
Sure, go ahead.
We're good to go?
Yeah, just talk to me for a minute.
Yeah. My name was is Lowell Burwell, and
Hold on just a moment. Do it again before it stops.
Would you? Pretty much you have 1 second. Quite literally, you only have 1 second.
Hold on.
Let me
You
see.
got another card?
Yeah, I got more
Don't
cards.
Don't worry about it.
Let me see.
hey, you can tell them later on. Put it on there.
We could put type.
Yeah.
Well, no, I mean, do you want to look straight at the camera? I think straight at the camera, just say your name and your position.
Name was Lowell Burwell, and I was the first hospital corpsman that was assigned to. Came from UDT 21, and I was the first corpsman in 3rd Force Recon.
Could you just say your name? And I was the first corpsman of. I'm sorry, I'm not saying it right.
My name is Lowell Burwell. At the time, I was a 2nd class hospital corpsman, and I was the first one that was assigned to 3rd Force Recon Company.
Ready? Action.
My name is Lowell Burwell. I was a 2nd class hospital corpsman.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah,
We'll do it.
Didn't work.
No, he's.
That tricked me.
I run your camera over, huh?
Yeah, we got memory cards. Just have to stop and change them. Great job,
I
Carl.
know, well, some of those things that get all turned around, and
Don't worry
I know I was going off down the wrong road sometimes,
But we kept
lost
coming
my
back.
thoughts, lost my
Kept coming
thoughts.
back where we needed to be though, so that's fine.
Or you can cut and splice and
Yeah.
just don't turn me out as,
And don't go away because he's gonna put in another card and then we can just record that.
I'm gonna go out and get another memory chip.
Yeah, we're gonna take a break right after that.
you want me to stay here
Yeah,
or what?
because we just wanna get your introduction.
Oh,
And then we're gonna
okay,
leave. We're
okay.
all gonna take a break.
Sorry about that.
It's okay.
And the only information you want is just my name and my position and, or what?
Yes, the statement you just made.
1 second.
Just give me a signal when to start.
Okay, whenever you're ready.
My name is Lowell Burwell. I was the first corpsman assigned to 3rd Force Recon Company in 1965. It's when they started, I guess what they call us a plank owner.
Okay, now do it one more time and just look directly into the
And
camera.
if I may, you are a Marine, so you have quite a lot of proud. You're quite proud, I'm sure. So you're welcome to give it, show us that.
What is this now? I'm not a real actor, so.
No, you don't have to act. Say it with confidence.
My name was Lowell Burwell. I was the first corpsman assigned to 3rd Force Recon Company when it initially was began training.
No, that's great. Thank you, sir. Had quite a bit of